originally is that I take parchment paper and I use a 9-inch cake pan to draw a circle. Actually, what I did here was I used the inside of the 9-inch pan, and then I did the rim of it. It was a little bit bigger because when I made the 9-inch one last night, I actually thought it looked a little small. So today I'm going to make one, and I think I'm going to spread it around to the somewhat larger thing. So a pavlova is basically a huge meringue. There's a lot of controversy when you read about it, about where the pavlova really started. Did it start in Australia or New Zealand? Apparently both countries have had an ongoing argument about who started it. But what is true is that it was created for the famous Russian ballerina Anna Pavlova. So around the turn of the 20th century. And it's been made in both of those countries since then. In Australia and New Zealand, they tend to make it with kiwi. All the times that I've made these now, about 4 times. First time was last summer, and it was just an astounding discovery to me because it's beautiful and it's very dramatic and it is absolutely delicious. When they're done right, the meringue, it's a huge meringue, so the outside of it will be crispy. The edges of it will be a little bit more crispy, and then on the inside, it's supposed to be like a marshmallow. Today, I'm going to make one that has both lemon curd, whipped cream, berries, fresh berries, and a raspberry sauce. And so we'll go through each of those steps. As I said, the second lemon curd that I made last night turned out to be a little stiffer than the first one. So we'll talk a little bit about how to prevent that from happening. So first thing I'm going to do is make a meringue. And the number of eggs that you use, 5 million different recipes. Last summer I used, for the most part, I used Ina Garten's recipe, and she calls for four extra large eggs. And that's what I'm doing. That's what I used. Last night, the one I made with 4 large eggs. And I think that might be why it was a little skimpy. So here's 4 extra large eggs. They're at room temperature. I know you've all separated eggs, but you know that it's easiest to separate the eggs when they're really cold, because then the yolk stays in the holder, whatever it is. I use my hands to separate eggs, and the whites glop down in one easy piece. When you're making any kind of a meringue, it is critical that the bowl that the egg whites go in and the mixer bowl and the beaters have to be as clean and grease-free as you can possibly make them, because if there's any debris in there, it's going to keep the meringue from getting fluffy. So these are now at room temperature. So when I separated them, they were cold, and then I've left them out for a couple of hours, so they're at room temperature now. I'm just going to put those in here. What goes into a meringue is really simple. 4 extra large eggs, a cup of sugar. Most of the recipes ask you to use what's called caster sugar or extra fine sugar. And you can buy that in the store. It comes in little containers like this, and sometimes in bigger containers, but I typically keep a couple of these around when I'm making icing because the extra fine sugar is nice. If you don't have this, you can take a cup or a little bit more of regular sugar and put it in a food processor or a blender and whiz it around a little bit, and then it becomes extra fine sugar. The reason extra fine sugar is nice is because in the meringue, you want that sugar to be really incorporated, and if you don't use the extra fine sugar, and if you don't have it, you don't have to, but if you're not really careful about how you're putting the sugar into the meringue, you're going to have it's going to be grainy, and you don't want it to be that. It's like biting into a marshmallow that had grit in it. You wouldn't want it to do that. So I used a cup of extra fine sugar. The other thing that goes into a meringue is some cornstarch. A lot of recipes say 2 teaspoons, and then a lot of people said 2 teaspoons made it taste chalky. The cornstarch is there to make the meringue fluffier. So I compromised and I used 1.5 teaspoons of cornstarch, and I use this kind. And then you need some kind of acid. And the 3 things that are mentioned are white wine vinegar or even apple cider vinegar. You're only going to use a tablespoonful. You absolutely do not taste the vinegar, but you need some acid. You need a little bit of salt. So either white wine, either plain white vinegar or apple cider vinegar or lemon juice, a tablespoon of it, or a half a teaspoon of this stuff, which is called cream of tartar. And I have it, so that's what I use both times. So I have a half a teaspoon of that. So the first thing you do, and I'm gonna now tip this down so you can see, you won't be able to see the inside of the bowl, but I'm gonna stop the machine at each stage. So the first thing I'm gonna do is to start it kind of at medium, because what I want to do is to froth. I want the egg whites to have some froth. And the reason you're doing that is to break up the protein and get the eggs started. So I'm gonna put it up to medium, and I'll show you what the froth looks like. Let's see if I can tip this down. You see it's getting frothy in there, and that's what you want it to look like. As soon as it starts to get frothy like that, I'm going to put a little salt in there. Hold on a second, I did forget my salt. I just want a little pinch of salt in. And now I'm going to turn the beater up to high, and I'm going to beat it now to a kind of medium stage. And the medium stage is when it's thickened and it holds soft peaks. And as soon as it holds soft peaks, I'm going to start to take this sugar and then the cornstarch and the cream of tartar, and I'm going to slowly put those into there. And I'm going to keep beating it until the egg whites hold a really, really stiff peak. So now I'll show you. I'm going to stop this because I want you to see what this is like. So see, that's all. I don't know if you can see. You see the little peak? It's really soft, and it's kind of going to flop down. If I sit here long enough, that will fall down into the bowl. So those are really soft. I'm going to do it a little bit more. High.
Hey, Mom.
What?
Question for you. So if you mess up and you put the sugar in, can you start over with cold egg whites, or do you need to wait until like later on?
You have to let the egg whites come to room temperature for at least an hour, because they won't whip up if they're cold. So that's a really soft peak. And now I'm gonna, somebody dump the whole cup of sugar in?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, I've done that too. So this is how, I'm gonna show you how slowly, now I'm gonna turn it on really high, and I'll show you how slowly the sugar is gonna go in. I want you to see. I'm turning it high, and this is what I'm doing. And I wait a little bit. I'm putting about a tablespoon in at a time. And I've got the beaters up as high as they can go. I'm doing like that, a little bit at a time. See it? Like that. Now I'm going to kind of put the cornstarch and the cream of tartar in there. And I'm going to add the last bit of sugar. Got a lamp back here.
Can't really hear you when you're that far back, Mom.
Let's shut that lamp off because it was going on and off. Last bit of sugar. And then I'm going to let those keep going for just a little bit more. I can see here that they look shiny, but let me see if I can get these beaters off so I can show you how this peak is. So see what happens to that peak? See how it blooped over? Can you see it? See that? It tipped over there. So it's not really standing up straight, which means that you want it to go a little bit longer. So I'm going to beat it for probably another 2 more minutes.
That's called a soft peak.
Yeah.
It's also very humid here today because of the rain, and humidity and meringues don't really go together really well. So it might not ever get to that hard stiff peak that I want from it. Sort of didn't last night and it turned out okay. I'll let that go just a little bit more, and it's towards the end, so I'm just gonna tip in that vanilla like that. And the vanilla is not all incorporated, so when this comes off here, I'm gonna scoop around to make sure it's all folded in. Those look pretty good.
The other thing about meringues is that you can make these ahead of time. Let me get a spoon here and see if I can, how this is doing. No, probably could go a little bit more. Do you think, Pia? Should that stand straight up? Pia?
Yeah, that's still a
That's
medium peak,
oh,
let's say.
okay. All right.
When
So
it stands straight up, it will be a stiff peak.
I'm just gonna get it a little bit more. Basically pretty boring, and it doesn't take a whole lot of skill to do this. You're just gonna let this keep going. And I can see here that it's really shiny, and that's another sign that it's starting to be done. When I get this ready to go into the oven, obviously this is going to be in the oven, and you're not going to see this one come out, but I'll take pictures of this one when it comes out of the oven later on today. But we're going to decorate the one that I made last night. 2 minutes seems like a long, long time sometimes. Has anybody ever tried
Would you ever use
before?
Ma, would you ever use a hand mixer, or do you need a stand mixer for this?
Say it again. Do you need a stand mixer?
Do you need a stand mixer, or could you use like a hand mixer?
You could use a hand mixer. You'd just be standing there with those beaters for a long time. I mean, I could basically walk away from this and do other stuff. But you can use a good, I'm going to use my hand mixer later to make whipped cream. You can certainly use it with the whip attachment. Okay, let's see how we're doing.
I actually don't know what would happen. That's better, I think. Those are, yeah. In the bowl, I can see that the peaks, I don't know if I can show you this, but the peaks are not bending over at all. They're standing straight up. So I'd say that that's where I want it to be. So I'm going to clean off these beaters. Hold on. And then we're going to pile it onto the parchment. And sometimes the best thing to use are your fingers. You don't want to waste any of it. It's so pretty. Let's get it off here. Let me get that out of the way. So there it is in the bowl. Let me get this tipped down a little bit again. And there's some vanilla around the sides. And I don't want to mess with this too much because I've worked really hard to get that full of air. And now what I'm going to do with this, I'm going to turn this camera around so you can see the piece of parchment paper. And you can see my circle, and I'm just going to glop it right into the middle of the circle. Some recipes, and I think last summer, I actually made one with 6 egg whites rather than 4, because I made a huge one last summer, and I know that it was bigger than this. Look at how shiny it is. It's really beautiful. Get it all in there. My friend Georgia makes wonderful lemon meringue pies, and I was never able to make a really good lemon meringue pie. But I've been able to make these, and I don't know why one didn't work and the other did. You should try lemon meringue pie again. There are also ways to make meringues where you cook it, you're making the meringue over in a double boiler as you're beating the egg whites. And those egg whites, I forget whether that's a Swiss or an Italian one, but those egg whites end up being cooked. And so you can use that kind of a meringue on a cake because it's cooked. You can use it as an icing on a cake. This is not cooked, so you have to bake it. So see, it's a big mound. And now what I'm going to do is to spread the mound around to the edge of the circle. And you want to get it all the way around in as much a nice a circle as you can get. And you're piling it up more on the outside than you are in the middle. You're leaving the middle sunk in a little bit because you're going to put filling in there. And you don't want to smooth it out. Some people pipe this onto here, but you really don't need to do that. It's really prettier, I think, when it's like this. One of the next things I want to try to make is a cake that's called a dacquoise. And that's made with meringue that you fold nuts into, hazelnuts, and then you incorporate it into an actual cake. So see, I'm kind of piling it up a little higher on the outside, and then I'm just going to use, this thing is a nice thing to use. This is an icing spatula, so it's flat. But I just want to make some pretty peaks on the outside. I don't want to make them too big because it'll burn. So that is essentially it. That's the meringue. It doesn't take a whole lot to do it. And there it is, all ready to go into the oven. And I said before, I had preheated the oven to 350. And I'm going to put it in the oven at that. And then I am immediately going to turn the oven down to 250. So there's my Pavlova. That's the beginning of it anyway, the meringue. So I'm going to put this in the oven. I'll be right back. So that's in the oven, 350 with the oven now immediately turned down to 250. And it's going to stay in there for about an hour and a half. I put it in for an hour and 10 or 15 minutes, and then I look through the door. I don't open the oven. I look through the door to see whether it's looking a little puffed up and to see what color it is, because I don't want it to be too, I don't want it to get too brown. It's supposed to be kind of pale golden on the bottom and really white on the top. So now we're going to go over to the stove and we're going to make the lemon curd, and we're going to hope there are no ants who want to join us. Let's go over there. I had done this whole fancy thing with figuring out how to use my iPhone as a second camera, and it didn't work. So what I have here is a rigged up double boiler. I've just got some water in this pan. If you have a real double boiler, you can use that, or you can do what I did. You take a pan like this, I'm going to bring that water to a boil, and then I'm going to use this in the top of here, and that's what I'm going to be cooking the curd in. You don't have to do this. You can cook a lemon curd right directly in the pan, but you have to be really, really, really careful not to burn the curd. Because what happens with a lemon curd or an orange curd or any kind of curd is that it looks like nothing's happening, like it's not doing anything. It's just lemon juice and egg yolks and sugar. And then all of a sudden it begins to thicken. And you just have to be really careful to keep the heat on really low when that happens, to make sure you're stirring and stirring and stirring. You can also make lemon curd in a microwave, and that's probably a more forgiving way to make a curd. Just gonna let that come to a boil.
I thought you weren't supposed to use your sink.
Well, I've got a big bowl in there so that if I turn the water on, the water goes into the bowl, and then I dump the bowl in the bathroom sink. That's what I have to do right now. So I'm just gonna pain in the neck, and we're not gonna get a plumber here till Monday if we're lucky.
I thought it was the sprayer last time you had that leak.
And this happened the first week of the quarantine, and a nice plumber taught me what to do, and I did that, but that's not what it's doing now. It's just, I mean, it's like there's a hole. So we'll see. Should have had this water on before. Who's making this as we speak? Anybody? Who dumped the sugar? That's what I want to know. Hi, Chelsea. It's okay. You can also take those egg whites and put them over a bowl of warm water like this, and it'll warm them faster to bring them to room temperature. Don't put them in, you know, kind of put them over, or even, you don't want to cook the egg whites, right? So this is almost coming to a boil, so I'm gonna put this on here. You don't want the water to touch the bottom of the bowl. It's not, but it's a little close, so I'm gonna do that. I have my big pasta pan under the sink where the leak is, and a bowl in there. Okay, so what's in here? You know the 4 egg whites that I had before? So what's in here are the egg yolks, those 4 yolks. And so I'm gonna put the egg yolks. I have 2/3 of a cup of sugar. Doesn't have to be fine sugar. Regular sugar is great. Fine sugar would be good too. I've got 1/3 of a cup of lemon juice. It's about 3 lemons. And I got a tablespoon of lemon zest and a little bit of salt. And we're gonna heat those. And then the last thing I'm gonna put in there is 6 tablespoons of butter, room temperature butter, 1 tablespoon at a time. What I did last night is, it didn't seem to me to be thickening. There's the sugar. It all just goes in there like this. There's the lemon juice. So everything's in there except for a pinch of salt. Put that in there. And then I need my wire whip, which I hear. And I'm gonna just stir this around. I'll show you what it looks like. It's really thin. I'm gonna keep that water at a pretty good flip once it starts to boil. I won't keep it up as high as I have it now, but I'm gonna keep it up fairly high. What I did last night is I turned it down really low, and I must have stood here for 20 minutes trying to get these eggs and the egg and sugar to congeal. You want this to thicken to the consistency of hollandaise sauce. That's where you want it. And then you're gonna take it off the heat, and 1 tablespoon at a time, you're gonna melt the butter into the curd. And that's what gives it the creamy, creamy consistency. I will tell you that last night I thought, oh, this is just not thick enough. And when you put it in the refrigerator overnight, as you should, to let it get ready, it really thickens. And so when I took it out of the refrigerator this morning, it's way too thick. I had to actually thin it, and I'll show you the way I thinned it. It's worse to have it thin than it is to have it too thick, because if it's too thick, you can thin it down But obviously, if it's too thin and you're trying to put it on something, it's not going to stay the way you want it to be. It's sort of like, you know, you've had lemon curd. It's like lemon pudding. Last summer when I made these, I did not make them with the lemon curd. I just used whipped cream and berries. And one recipe that I made, the berries had a lot of sauce, and that was just delicious. And one of the times when I made it, whatever it was at Christmas time, I made it with cranberries and something else. There wasn't enough sauce. So to me, the meringue was too dry. And I just thought this would be an interesting addition. So we're going to have lemon curd and then whipped cream and then berries. And then I made a raspberry sauce that will mix in with the berries, and when you serve it, you can serve, and people can pour extra raspberry sauce. The raspberry sauce, I'll show you how I made it. It's really easy. You just get a jar of seedless raspberry jam, a pint of fresh raspberries if you have them. If you don't, you can use frozen raspberries, some sugar, and some liqueur. I used Cointreau. You can use framboise. You can use any kind of liqueur that you want. So that water is boiling now, and this is not doing much yet. And it doesn't. It looks like nothing's going to happen, nothing's going to happen, nothing's going to happen. And then pretty soon it happens really quickly. I have certainly made curds, lemon curd, over direct heat. You just have to be really vigilant. And my stove, these burners, even when you put them on simmer, it's really not low enough. None of the burners are low enough. I keep meaning to get one of those, they're copper plates that you can put when you want something to cook really slowly, and you can put them over your gas burner and it diffuses the heat. And I'm going to lower this a little. It's really boiling. And nothing's happening here. And I wanted you to see this if you've never made a curd, because I want you to see how quickly something starts to happen and how long it takes for that something to happen. It looks like nothing's happening. You've got a lot of eggs in there, and you've got sugar in there. And so you're actually cooking these eggs, and the sugar is thickening them, but you also added a lot of lemon juice. So all these things have to work together. But basically what's happening is that those eggs are cooking, and the sugar and the cooked eggs are what make it thick. And I'm gonna hold this. I had said in the notes that it would be better to use a silicone whip, and one of the recipes talked about that, and I had one which has mysteriously disappeared. And the reason they said to use that is that the stainless steel whisk, some people thought, gave the curd a kind of funny irony taste, but I surely didn't notice that in the one that I made last night. So as soon as this starts to thicken, I'm going to stop, because I just wanted you to see how long it takes for it to do that. And then we're going to use the one that I have, and I'm going to make whipped cream. Everything else is made, and we're just going to put those together into one beautiful pavlova. And the sun is actually shining after what we had here all night.
You get any stuck?
No, and none of it stuck. We never really had a lot of snow. There were big, heavy snowflakes, and at one point it looked like it was, there was some hail out there. Who got snow? Albany? Louise said they got snow in Albany. Did Rockland County get anything? I don't know whether Louise Javino is still on.
We had a dusting in
We got a
Pennsylvania.
dusting of snow in Albany.
Yeah.
That's
We had a
all.
dusting in
And it's been sunny all
Pennsylvania.
day.
You got some in Pennsylvania, George?
Yeah.
Angela,
some
where's-
hail, but it's beautiful
where-
out there now.
Who else
We're
got
still
snow?
here. There was a snow squall just about 10 minutes ago.
Oh, okay.
Rockland.
Louise, that's Louise Javino from Rockland County, where my office is. Pediatrician extraordinaire.
Yeah, but I can't do meringue, so.
Nothing's happening, folks.
Here, mute. She doesn't need to hear the dog. Mute that.
I need you folks to help me because I am having the most terrible temptation to get a new dog. So I need all of you in unison to say, Angela, do not buy a dog. Do not go to the rescue and get a dog.
Oh my God, don't get a dog.
See, that's my
Worst
daughter.
idea ever.
You better send me your children or I'm buying a
I'll
dog.
vacuum and I'll show you how much.
I'll just bring my dog up there for like 2 days and you will no longer have that urge.
Yeah, I know.
Go ahead, get yourself a dog, Angela.
Thank you, Dagmar. I know what the problem would be. Then the dog, you either have to find a kennel or you have to take the dog every place you go. And since I'm still
Are
hoping
we muted?
in my lifetime to
Get a
travel,
dog, Angela. Get a dog.
you just want shared misery.
Get a goldfish.
Get a goldfish. I could borrow somebody's dog for a couple days.
Rent
Yeah,
a
if you
dog.
borrow mine, you'll never get another dog.
I want a big, big dog again.
He's crazy.
Now I have to tell you something. This is starting, I'm starting to feel some activity here. And I probably can't show it to you. But it's definitely starting to do things. And usually once it starts, another reason to use a silicone whisk is that it doesn't get as hot as this whisk is in my hand.
Judy Strafer said that you can also make lemon curd recipes that are really easy in an Instant Pot where you set it and forget it, no stirring and watching. And also she had fleur.
Judy Strafer is my wonderful friend who is an Instant Pot expert. I have an Instant Pot. I cannot use it. I have made horrible things in it. So we were supposed to have this lovely visit up here. And then came, I'm going to use this. And then came the quarantine. So she's promised me that I'm going to have Instapot lessons when she comes. To me, the problem with an Instapot is that you have to lug it out. I know people keep it out. Judy probably keeps it out all the time. And then the other problem I had with it is that everything I made with it, the rubber ring around it smelled like that. And I could not get that smell out of it. And I gathered that people buy extras of those rings. But Judy makes yogurt, right, Judy?
Yes.
Yogurt, you make everything in it, don't you?
Risotto's incredibly easy and wonderful. I make a lot of things in there.
Yeah, cakes,
So
have you baked in it? What?
I-
I didn't hear it still.
Cheesecakes are awesome. Bread pudding is awesome because those are both steamed essentially anyway.
Yeah,
We have some great roasts and barbecue and Mexican recipes and just a lot of things. There are things that aren't good in it, but you learn.
yeah.
But I'm going to come up there and we're going to cook and we're going to play cards.
Yes, she's also promised to teach me how to play hearts, which I don't know how to play. And what's the other one?
Hand and foot.
Hand and foot. Never heard of that, but I want to play that. So this is definitely getting thicker now. It's not thick enough for me to stop yet, but it's getting there. And it's going to get just a little bit thicker, and then I'm going to take it off the heat. I'm going to take the bowl actually out of the pan because I don't want it to be in the hot water even. And I'm basically going to melt 6 tablespoons of butter into here. And then that's it. It goes into a bowl. You put a piece of saran directly on top of it, touching it, because if you don't, it'll form a skin. And you just put it in the refrigerator until it cools. I usually make this the night before. If you weren't intending to make lemon curd, you do not have to have lemon curd to make this Pavlova. Just whipped cream this is gilding the lily for sure to have lemon curd, and I love lemon curd. I also, it's not, it doesn't have a whole lot of sugar in it, but there's sugars in the berries, there's sugar in the whipped cream, there's sugar in the meringue, and there's sugar in the raspberry sauce. So to me, the contrast with the kind of sourness of the curd, I think is going to be delicious.
Well, fun fact, you can also buy lemon curd. My mom makes a delicious lemon curd
Yes,
in your favorite supermarket.
Yep. And Lynn, I'm telling you right now, you're eating this tonight. Lynn is my neighbor. So a lot of my experiments end up, at least some of them end up over there. I've got 2 meringues now. This one and the one that's in the oven. You see how long this is taking? My tendency is to want to just take it off the heat and put it right in the pot underneath it and do it directly, but I'm not going to now that I've wasted all this time doing it this way.
Would a regular double boiler work better? With it be metal?
Maybe. They tell you though to use the double boiler that has the porcelain lining so that you're not putting the lemon into the directly into the stainless steel. So there's something about an interaction between stainless steel and the lemons apparently that worries people. I think probably I'm going to look at that microwave one, because that's the other thing. If I can make this by sticking a bowl in the microwave and stirring every once in a while, it seems to me that that's a better thing to do than, especially for a small amount of lemon curd like this, than to.
Or the Instant Pot.
Yeah, but that's what I was going to say, Judy. Then I got to lug that Instant Pot out and doodle with it. I'm also, I'm old. So my mother had a pressure cooker. I had a pressure cooker when I first got married. It was the most terrifying piece of kitchen equipment I've ever had in my entire life. I was always positive that that bubble thing on the top of it was always doodling around and making steaming noises. And my mother did blow it up one time up through the ceiling. So I'm always positive I'm going to blow up the whole house, even with that. It's definitely, look, it's definitely thicker. Can you see that it is? And it's now what's going to happen is going to happen much more quickly than it took all this to happen. And so this is when I want to be especially careful. Stop this just for a second so that I can cut my butter up, which I should have done, into smaller pieces. I've got 6 tablespoons of unsalted butter here. If you don't have unsalted butter, you can use salted butter. Just don't put any salt in the lemon curd. And the butter is what makes it really smooth. Hold this again, it's still hot. Now that's really thick. That's probably as thick as I want this to be. And so I'm going to take it off this heat and put it onto the counter here. Shut the heat off. It's coming off. And get rid of this. Try to bring this over here so you can see. But 1 tablespoon at a time, I'm going to melt the butter in there. And because it's so hot, the butter is going to melt really fast. But you want that piece to melt before you put the next piece in, like that. It still feels a little thinnish, but last night I cooked it to be on this place, and then overnight in the refrigerator, it was like it was like cement. It was really, really hard, so I had to loosen it. Three. This stuff, somebody said, what can you do with lemon curd? I mean, you can do all kinds of things with it. It's great filling for anything. You put it between layers of cake. You can also just sit with a big bottle of it, and a spoon, and eat it. You can also make lemon mousse by making a curd like this and making whipped cream and then folding the whipped cream into the curd and serving it like a parfait in a parfait glass with berries in between. They're like little lemon clouds. That is really nice. See it? It's kind of still on a little bit on the thin side. Got one more pat of butter to go in it. And then I'm just gonna let this be. And eventually that's gonna go into the refrigerator. That's that. That's the curd. I'm gonna taste it and I'll tell you how it is.
How is it?
That's perfect. That's delicious. Okay, we have one more task to do. I'll show you my meringue. Here's my bowl. Let's see, there it is. I'm at. And there's the meringue from last night. So to me, it's a little smaller, but it's going to go onto this eventually. I'm not going to put it onto here yet because I'm going to keep it on the tray here because I want to pour all the stuff on here, and I have one more thing to do before I do that. But you see, oh, by the way, you can make these days ahead of time. You can keep them in an airtight container for a couple of days. These can be frozen and unfrozen, so you can make them ahead of time. So let me show you first what I want to. Grant, would you get me the? Oh, never mind. Excuse me, 1 second. I got to get something out of the freezer.
How many people are with you today? Hi, I'm the guy that's gonna eat all this good stuff. Ha ha ha.
So I had a bowl and my beaters in the freezer. Would you get me the heavy cream that's on the shelf in there, please?
Yes.
The full container. I'm gonna whip some cream. And there's also a container on the top shelf. Is that the full one? There's a new one in there. I'd like the new one.
Oh, I got it.
There's also a container of raspberry sauce in there that I could use. Just give me the whipped cream first, please. Thank you. I'm going to do about a cup of heavy cream. So I've got cold beaters and a cold bowl. And I have a little bit of confectionery sugar and a little bit of vanilla. So that's about a cup, probably. And we're going to beat it. Put a little bit of vanilla in here. Try not to. There you go. Probably about a half a teaspoon, so.
Yeah.
You want this to be relatively stiff. It's got to hold its shape when you're cutting into it. You know, if you're not careful, you can make butter this way. So. A bit more. It's pretty good. Could maybe be a little bit more. Let me do just a tiny bit more. Okay, that's good. So now we have all the component parts. I'm going to get them all out on the table. And we're going to put this pretty thing together. Thank you. So here's my raspberry sauce, which has been in the refrigerator. And I'm going to scooch it around a little bit. This is the lemon curd that I made last night. It's still too stiff to spread. So I'm going to take a couple of tablespoons of this cream. I'm going to just lighten this curd a little bit with some of the cream. And you see how much better it is now? So you can, I could have beat in a little bit of water, I guess, to loosen it up, but just a tablespoon or so. And if I wasn't whipping cream, I could probably do that just by putting a couple of tablespoons of heavy cream into the curd for the extra liquid. So that now is a much better consistency, and it's a more pale color. It's still going to taste delicious. All right, so let me get everything out of the way. We have raspberry sauce, we have whipped cream. Give me a couple more tablespoons in.
You want another tablespoon?
A couple more.
Big one.
And I have a big bowl here of fresh strawberries and blueberries. I just put a couple of tablespoons of sugar into that to make it nice and juicy. There's a lot of juice there. And I put a little bit of that Cointreau in there too. Why not? So we got all our things out here. And there's the decor, or there's the Pavlova. So in the recipe books, and I don't know why, it tells you to turn it over on this side, but I don't know why I would want to do that. So I'm not gonna. I'm gonna do it like this. And the first thing I'm gonna do is to put some lemon curd on there. I'm just gonna put it on right in the middle, and I'm gonna spread it around.
What's that?
I'm going to take this and just spread it out to the edge there of the depression in the meringue. And then the next thing I'm going to put on there is the cream. I'm just spreading this whipped cream, and I'm kind of spreading the whipped cream around the edge of the circle onto the edge of the lemon curd, like that. So you kind of have lemon curd in the middle and cream, whipped cream on the outside. You wouldn't want to, if you're going to serve this tonight, if you were going to serve this at dinner for dessert, you wouldn't want to put this together too much more than this, but you do want to put it together a little bit ahead of time, because you do want some of this, the whipped cream, to soften into that meringue. So it wouldn't be a bad idea to do this an hour beforehand. Some of the recipes say you can do it longer than that. I can tell you that leftover pavlova the next day, when the juices of everything have kind of seeped into that marshmallowy stuff in the middle, is probably one of the most sublimely wonderful things I've ever eaten. So now I'm going to take some of these berries, and I think I'm going to put this up on my tray now, because it's going to get messier. So if you're going to make a dessert like this,
Have a tray.
have a tray. The meringue is already kind of cracking a little bit around the edges there. I'm being really careful. Where's my napkin? Now we're going to start spooning the fruit all over this. First, I'm doing it with as little juice as possible. And then I'm going to dribble some of the juice. And we don't care if it scooches around the ends. Okay.
I'm looking to see what's here.
There we go. What do you think? Want some?
Yes, please.
Speak up, speak up.
Okay, so there I could put more. I could let it scooch down the sides like this, and like this, and like that. Did you open that oven?
No, I just peeked.
He didn't open the oven, he just peeked, folks.
That looks amazing, Angela. I'm going to have to go for a walk to walk off the calories just from watching those.
So what do you think? There's that. I'm gonna put a little tiny bit more. I have a little tiny bit more whipped cream on top like that. Like that. And then,
Oh no.
let me get my spoon. And see how much raspberry sauce I made? That's because if you make this much raspberry sauce, you'll never have to worry about it being dry. You can put this in a little bowl to serve at the table with a little pitcher. But this is what you want to do with this. You just want to drizzle this all over it like this. By the way, this is a dessert that is sometimes made for Passover because it doesn't have any bad stuff in it except for the cornstarch, which you don't have to use if you don't want to.
You're killing me.
Hmm?
You're killing me. That's beautiful.
You didn't tell me George Ann was gonna be here.
Okay, folks, there it is.
Oh my goodness, that's
Gorgeous.
beautiful.
Isn't that pretty?
Gorgeous.
Oh, beautiful.
It looks beautiful.
I'll make one.
Is.
And I hardly made a mess. Well, I sort of did make a mess. I made a mess. Go make one. Everybody go make one.
Angela, this is Trace. Can you talk about cutting it?
Yeah, you just have to be brave.
Can you show it again, Angela?
Cut it?
No, just show it.
Oh, show it.
Oh, look. Oh, yum, yum. That's beautiful.
Isn't it pretty? And at Christmas time, I made it with a cranberry sauce and pomegranate seeds. And it was beautiful. And I put little mint leaves all around it, so it was really, really pretty.
Oh
So
my goodness.
it's mostly supposed to be. It's a wonderful summer dessert, obviously because of the berries, but you can make it any time of the year. I've seen a recipe with rhubarb, cooked rhubarb. In fact, that's what I was going to do with the mini meringues, is make a rhubarb jelly and serve that on the mini ones. And at Christmas time, as I said, I made it with I made a kind of cranberry sauce and then spread pomegranate seeds all over it, and it was so festive and Christmassy and beautiful on a Christmas table. So Tracy asked about cutting it. You cut into it like you would cut into a pie. I'm not going to cut into this now because I want that to soak in a little bit, but actually I'll cut it. Let me get a bigger knife.
Adam, are you on? Okay.
So I've got a big knife. So I'm going to cut into it. It's going to crunch and I can feel it and it breaks up a little bit, but you serve it sort of like a pie. You know, you cut into it like you cut into a pie. And let's see what the middle of it looks like. Yep. Oh, that's perfect. See, it's like marshmallow in the middle there. That's how you cut it, like that. And then you'd serve it on a plate like that.
It's beautiful.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And you can't feel it, but that is like that's like marshmallow in there. This is crisp. This is a little crisper. And inside in the middle there, it's like marshmallow. And
Wow.
I would, serving it on a plate, I would do this. Or else put a little pool of the raspberry sauce and serve it in that little pool. And really the next day it was even better, but there, that's how it looks.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
Okay. Yeah, see, there's a lot of sauce down there on the plate now. Let me show you. See, from the berries dripping down. And that's okay, because that's going to soften the meringue there a little bit. But, you know, honestly, the first couple times I served this, it went so fast that I didn't have to worry about any of that. So, okay, guys, we did it.
Thank you. Okay, thank you.
Bravo.
Thank you.
Everybody,
Beautiful. It was beautiful.
yeah. Show me what you make.
Happy Mother's Day.
Happy
Thanks
Mother's
to all of
Day.
you. Hi, Sharon.
Day.
Hi. So good to see your face. Don't forget to send me pictures. That's my reward. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Angela.
Bye.
Bye.